Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon session of what promises to be a very interesting discussion. My name is Nilanjan Sarkar. I'm Deputy Director of the LSE South Asia Center, and we are delighted to be able to host this event today, UK and India after Brexit. And it's my very pleasant duty to introduce and to welcome our esteemed panel of speakers, as also the audience, the live audience, who are watching on Facebook. But before I go on to introduce the speakers, I just wanted to say a couple of sentences about how we brought this event together. We were initially hoping to do this event to mark the end of the visit by the UK Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson, who had been invited to attend the Republic Day parade in India, but which could not happen because of the COVID pandemic. And we decided, we had thought that we would do this on the 29th, around the time that we were hoping he would return to the United Kingdom. When the trip actually did not happen and got cancelled, we actually thought that it would be equally interesting to have a panel discussion that was prospective rather than retrospective. And I'm very grateful that our speakers have agreed to participate in it, because it will make for very interesting discussion on the possibilities of what might lie ahead in terms of mutual relations, bilateral relations between the United Kingdom and India, now that the United Kingdom is out of the European Union. May I begin with introducing Lord Karan Bilimoria, who is founder and chairman of Cobra Beer, is the president of the Confederation of British Industries, is the founding chairman of the UK India Business Council, and the president of the UK Council of International Student Affairs. Lord Bilimoria has had a lot of interest in UK-India relations, understandably, for as long as I have known, and has also been a huge supporter of improving and making things happen in that context. And we're looking forward very much to his thoughts on where UK-India relations are headed in this new scenario. Because trade, investment are very important factors in this relationship to be, as are relations in foreign policy. And I am therefore equally privileged to introduce Ambassador Nirupama Menon Rao, who's a career diplomat and joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1973. Ambassador Rao has had several very important postings, but for the interest of this afternoon's discussion, I am delighted to say that Ambassador Rao has served as India's ambassador both in China as well as the United States. In China, Ambassador Rao served as the ambassador from 2006 to 2009, and in the United States from 2011 to 2013. And crucially, between those two very important ambassadorships, Ambassador Rao also served as Foreign Secretary from 2009 to 2011. I will not go on further, but I do want to mention that there is a book that is forthcoming called Telling It on the Mountain, India and China and the Politics of History, 1949 to 1962. This is the title of the working paper that I had read at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. It will perhaps show up with a newer title. And when it does, we'll be very happy to tweet about it. So do please follow us. For those of you who are watching us on Facebook, if you would like to ask questions, please send us the questions on Facebook. If you want to pose it to a particular speaker, then please do so. Please mention it. And if you would like to ask a question to the panel at large, you're also very welcome to do that. And I will read out your questions. This event is being held in collaboration with the National Indian Students and Alumni Union of the United Kingdom. And I am delighted to say that the founder and chairman, Sanam Arora, has joined us. The NISA is the apex organization in the United Kingdom that represents Indian students, alumni, and young professionals, not just Indian students, I should also say students of Indian origin. It does not affiliate itself with any political party. It's the largest organization with more than 30 universities that are affiliated and networked in it. And NISAO has often collaborated with several higher education institutions to do various kinds of events, including with the LSE and with the LSE South Asia Center. So we are very happy to be able to do an
Nilanjan, I think you've been muted, unfortunately.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
We can, yeah. Please go ahead.
That where did you hear me till? Let me go back and say it.
You were just introducing me, and we can take it from there.
Oh, I see. Did they hear about NISAO?
They did, yes. Thank you.
Okay, well, all I was saying was that I never missed the chance to say that Sanam is an alumnus of LSE, and that is the most important part of Sanam's introduction. I also want to say that Lord Bilimoria is a patron of NISAO. Finally, I am delighted to welcome Ahaan Gupta, who is a third-year student, undergraduate student at the LSE. He's the president of the LSE Students' Union India Society, which is a very vibrant society. They do a number of events. This has been a particularly difficult year for them. And they have come up with very innovative ways to continue doing events. They do something very interesting called the India Forum, which is in normal times, as I would say, a day-long event with a series of very interesting speakers. But I think this year, they're going to try and improvise and try and do it online. So Karan, Bilimoria, Nirupama Rao, Sanam, Arora, Ahaan Gupta, all of you, welcome to the LSE South Asia Center. I'm now going to hand over to Sanam to carry on with the first part of the program, and I will come back in the middle as we need to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nilanjan, and a very warm welcome to everyone who is watching this live stream. We're very, very pleased to be hosting with the LSE South Asia Center this rather special discussion on UK-India relations as the first of a series of discussions focused on India called the India Conference. Now, the idea behind the India Conference is to provide a platform to have regular, meaningful, and constructive, potentially difficult conversations about contemporary topics in India that matter to Indians both within India as well as all over the world, as well as to those who wish to engage with policymaking and with citizens of India. The LSE, of which I'm a rather proud alumnus, so thank you for mentioning that, Nilanjan, has a great historical relationship with India, from Babasaheb Ambedkar, the architect of the much cherished Indian Constitution, to Dr. K.R. Narayanan, one of the former presidents of India, and Urjit Patel, a recent governor of the Reserve Bank of India. Thousands of Indians have studied at the LSE over the last century, and many, many thousands will continue to do so, we hope, over the coming years. And indeed, as we project, we think that the number of Indian students coming to the UK can double, if not more. And so it is very important that we provide a platform for such constructive and meaningful conversations. The NISAO was born at the LSE, and I'm delighted Ahaan, who is the president of the India Society at the LSE, has joined us. Like the LSE India Society, we do have a number of India societies all over the UK, and the idea is to bring everyone together to engage with India in this constructive fashion. We want students at the LSE and beyond to have this infrastructure and ecosystem that they need to flourish in a rapidly evolving world, but to understand and engage with India, both from an international perspective, taking an objective third-party view, as well as evolve their own personal understanding of India through such critical and forward-looking conversations. Now, today we're gathered to talk about the very, very pertinent topic of UK-India relations post-Brexit, and I'm really grateful to both Lord Bilimoria and to Ambassador Rao for having taken the time out to join us today. We've entered 2021 in a time of fundamental change from the United Kingdom. Britain seeks to define its place as global Britain in a post-Brexit and hopefully sometime soon a post-pandemic world. The importance of UK's relationship with India has been described by the British government as key and strategic, and is perhaps best signaled in the invitation to the British Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Boris Johnson, extended to the Honourable Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, which of course, as Nilanjan mentioned, is hopefully going to be rescheduled for later in the year, and the appointment of the highly experienced Mr Alex Ellis as the new High Commissioner of the UK to India. When Mr Johnson's trip to India does materialise, subject to the whims of the pandemic, It will probably be the Prime Minister's first major bilateral visit since taking office, and the first since Britain's departure from the European Union. Now, much is expected from this visit by both countries, with Prime Minister Johnson and Prime Minister Modi speaking of delivering a quantum leap in the bilateral relationship. Mr. Johnson has already invited Mr. Modi as a guest at the G7 summit later this year, as well as to the COP26 conference in Glasgow later this year. Now, this new relationship, couched as it is in a historical frame, has unlimited potential for both countries. Bilateral cooperation in various sectors is of enormous interest to many, but most importantly to the Indian diaspora and students here in the UK. So at the India conference today, our aim is to tangibly explore the expectations and possible outcomes of Mr. Johnson's planned trip to India, particularly in the context of business, trade and investments, immigration, the wider UK-India relationship, as well as the very key and important considerations of foreign relations, the role of China and the role of the new Biden administration. So without further ado, I will invite Lord Bilimoria to please make your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all you do, and to Nissa, so proud to be a patron. Thank you to Nilanjan and the LSE. I've had a close association with the LSE for many years, and I almost feel like an alumnus myself. It's been so close. And Ahaan, thank you for what you're doing as president of the India Society, which is famous, of course, as Sanam says, so many famous Indians have come through the halls of the LSE. And I remember when I came as a student, the director of the LSE was an Indian as well. And Nirupama, I've had the privilege of interacting with you over the years, and it's so good to see you again. And you're one of our star ambassadors for India, holding the highest positions, and of course ended up as Foreign Secretary as well. And thank you to all of you who've joined us today. This could not be a more timely, as Nilanjan said, the Prime Minister's visit may have been cancelled, but the actual relationship, there is no more important time than now that we should be discussing this. Yes, he would have been there on the 26th of January on Rajpath, standing next to the President of India with Prime Minister Modi there. And of course, thanks to the pandemic, this has not been possible. But you know, sometimes things happen for the best, because I believe when he goes, and I've been privileged since 2005 to accompany Prime Minister Tony Blair, then Gordon Brown, then David Cameron twice, then along with Theresa May, and that was the last visit in 2016. And when we go with a big delegation, a big business delegation, universities delegation, and we go there, it makes an impact, and business gets done, and we create new initiatives and new partnerships. And I think we would not have been able to do that if the Prime Minister had gone on the 26th of January. Now, when he goes later in the year, we must make sure it is at a time when we can do it in a big way, because we need to do it. 2016 to 2021, almost 5 years will have passed since there was the major Prime Minister visit. This is a relationship that is far too important. We always talk about the UK's special relationship with the United States of America, and that is absolutely real. We've got President Biden now. We're looking forward to a really great future of unity and America looking out and embracing multilateral institutions. It's fantastic, Reese signing up again to the WHO, fantastic signing up to the Climate Accord. So we've got that positiveness, but there is another special relationship, and I've always said this from the time I was the founding chairman of the UK India Business Council, and that is the relationship between the UK and India. 4 centuries old, a really, really important relationship. And now we've got to make the most of it. And if I give you some facts, as the president of the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry is the largest business organization in the UK. Our sister organization is the CII, the Confederation of Indian Industry. And to show how close we are, the CII's office in London is located within the head office of the CBI in the city of London. That's how closely we work. And Lakshmi Paul is the representative here in the UK. We work very closely with the CII. And so that, the facts, the actual facts, I mean, 842 Indian companies in the UK turning over almost £50 billion, employing over 100,000 people. In India, over 400 UK companies employing 450,000 people directly and another 450,000 people indirectly. And look at the names. I mean, if you talk of the names of the Indian companies here, Tata, Infosys, HCL, look at the names of the British companies. I mean, my own business, Molson Coors and Cobra Beer, the joint venture I've had for 11.5 years. We own 3 breweries in India. We've got HSBC, Aviva, JCB, BP, AstraZeneca, Standard Chartered, Marks and Spencer's, the NHS, and I could go on. And here's the crux. So good is the relationship. Even during the pandemic, the CBI, released our Sterling Access report, and we have an office in Delhi. And we launched this report, the Sterling Access report, and it showed even in the midst of the pandemic, during lockdown between April and June in 2020, British companies invested £140 million into India. And if you go forward to September, that went up to over £1 billion. And even now, the figure would be much higher, and that's in the middle of a pandemic. But here's the reality. The total goods and services trade bilaterally between the UK and India is £24 billion. And that has gone up by 11.6%. So it has been increasing over the years. There's no question about that. I mean, it was £5 billion under 20 years ago. So it has gone up. But should it be that level? That's the sort of level we do with Canada, or the level we do with Australia, just a little higher than either of those countries. We should be doing far, far more with India, the UK and India together. Far, far more. I feel we're only scratching the surface. And let me put this into context. Our biggest trading partner by far is the European Union. It may be declining as a proportion of our trade, but even now it makes up 45% of the UK's trade. And that's natural. If you look at the gravity model of trade, they're right at our doorstep, and we're often seen as the gateway to Europe. And I hope even after Brexit, the UK is seen as a gateway to Europe, particularly for Indian countries. Our single biggest trading partner as a country is the United States of America. It makes up about 15% of our trade. The whole of the Commonwealth, 54 countries, including India, which makes up half the 2.5 billion population of the Commonwealth. If you include India, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all the other countries make up less than 10% of the UK's trade. America alone is 15%. Germany, one country in the European Union, is 9%. So one country, Germany, does almost as much trade as the whole of the Commonwealth, which includes India. That, to me, shows the enormous opportunity we have looking ahead. And as Sanam said, we have a big opportunity now in the UK. We've left the European Union. We left on the 31st of January last year. The transition period's over. Thank God we got a deal. When it was announced, I literally said, hallelujah, because a no deal would have been disastrous. A no deal would have been really, really pricey. We would have suffered. Consumers would have suffered. Businesses would have suffered. The British economy would have suffered. Having a deal was a prize. And that prize means we have a platform now of tariff-free, duty-free, quota-free trade with the European Union on which to build on. And that's fantastic. We've rolled over 60 trade deals with other countries that the European Union had bilaterally, including Canada and Japan and Singapore. Many of them have been rolled over. Now, we've got to make the most of them and make them bespoke. And the big opportunity is a UK-India free trade agreement. India's never been able to do one with the EU. It's for decades the negotiations have been going on. It's never happened. Why can't we make it happen between the UK and India? I think we can. The UK and India are 2 of the top 7 economies in the world, 2 of the largest economies in the world. We have the opportunity of leadership now with Britain hosting the G7. And the first thing the Prime Minister did was to invite India to join the meeting along with South Korea and Australia. And the CBI will be hosting the B7, the business organizations of the G7 getting together, which the Prime Minister of the host country always attends. And on top of that, this year, the UK is going to be hosting COP26, the huge climate change environment conference, the UN conference in Glasgow. And we're co-hosting that along with Italy, that's taking place in the UK. That's another big opportunity. Look at the huge leadership India shows in solar power. Look at the enormous leadership the UK shows in wind power. And I just chaired the Heat Commission at the CBI, where 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions are from heat and half of those are from buildings. And in the UK, there are 29 million buildings that are powered by, heated up by gas boilers. Only 1 million houses in the UK are up to the standard if we're to meet net zero by 2050. So we have to revamp all these 28 million houses into heat pumps and hydrogen boilers and using district heating to get there. It's a big, big job to be done. So there's a global challenge. If you ask young people today, and I hope some questions come up, what are the two most important things to young people today? And I have 2 teenage children and 2 who are in their early 20s. The first thing that matters to them is the environment and climate change and sustainability. That really, really matters. And the second thing that matters to them is diversity and inclusion. And as the first ethnic minority president of the CBI in its 60-year history, one of my 4 pillars, my priorities, is to champion ethnic minority participation in business across the board. And with that in view, in October, we launched Change the Race Ratio. And it's had a phenomenal take-up. This is representation at board level, at ExCo, -1, transparency of the ethnicity pay gap, which sadly exists. You know, in some instances, well over 10%. There should be no ethnicity pay gap. It is wrong. And companies should declare it and be transparent. We're saying any company over 250 employees should declare it by 2022. And finally, diversity and inclusion are used as a sort of cliched term. Yes, you can have diversity and tick the box that you've got the diversity, but the diversity is useless without inclusion. It is the inclusion, the mentoring, the culture, the environment for diversity to flourish that enables that diversity to take place. So championing the inclusion part of it as well. So to conclude, the education area, where this is where Sanam and I work closely together over the years, and the wonderful work that Nisa does, and she and I fought and fought and fought to get the 2-year post-graduation work visa back in my role as co-chair of the all-party parliamentary group on international students, in my role in being president of the Council, UK Council of International Student Affairs, which is all 450,000 international students. We won that battle, and we got that 2-year post-graduation work visa back. And on top of that, 3 years if you've got a PhD. So I think it's a big opportunity. The number of Indian students is going to rocket over the coming years. And the new education policy in India is wonderful news. The fact that finally foreign universities will be able to open up in India. And that's going to be a win-win both for India and for the other countries that participate. As Chancellor of the University of Birmingham, we have opened up a campus in Dubai. A brand new campus is going to be ready for the Expo this autumn. And I know that universities like Birmingham, when they're given a chance to open up campuses in India, there will be many, many universities, top 100 universities like Birmingham, who'd be interested in opening up in India. And Alex Ellis, who's a Cambridge University contemporary of mine, is now the new High Commissioner in India. He couldn't have gone at a more important time. And of course, Nirupama, the former Indian High Commissioner, who was there for just a few months, was brought back to the UK to become your equivalent, the head of the Foreign Service over here in the UK. And when I spoke to him, he said, when Alex went there, he said, Karan, Philip said, it's with a tinge of jealousy and envy that he is going there, and I had to come back to run the whole Foreign Service. So we wish Alex all the very best, and it's a privilege to be with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lord Bilimoria. May I begin with apologizing? For some reason, I had muted myself. It's never happened, but it did. So Sanam, thank you very much for telling me. But my apologies for that tardiness. Lord Bilimoria, what you're saying is clearly working, because I can tell you that we are getting questions saying, I would like to ask Lord Bilimoria this. So certainly the younger generation of people who are listening to it are sending questions. I also don't want to lose the chance to say that Philip Barton is an LSE alumnus. And as I said, I'm shameless about it. I flog it all the time. But thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. We are going to return to the two very important themes that you have raised, which is climate and environment, and diversity and inclusion from multiple aspects. But may I invite Ambassador Rao to please speak now, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Ambassador Rao.
Thank you, Nilanjan. And good afternoon to Sanam, to Ahaan. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here at the India conference of the LSE. And so glad to see that the National Indian Students Alumni Union of the Students and Alumni Union of the UK is a partner in this initiative. It's really a privilege to participate in your conference and to share a platform with my very distinguished fellow panelist, Lord Karan Bilimoria. who I've known, as he also mentioned, for a few years now. And actually, there is something we share in common. I don't know, Karan, if you're aware of that. Both he and I grew up and went to school in the Nilgiris, the Blue Mountains of South India. And the Nilgiris were immortalized in that line from Alfred Lord Tennyson, who spoke of the half-English Nilgiri air in describing those beautiful hills. Let me at the outset confess that I'm not an expert on the UK, and one of my regrets is that I never did have the opportunity to serve in a diplomatic posting in London. London must be one of the most interesting and fascinating places in which to work and interact with people, being as it is one of the world's most global cities, so steeped in history and in tune with the flow of the modern world. This is an extraordinary time for all of us, for humanity at large. The COVID pandemic has underscored our interdependence and the responsibilities and burdens we share in so many ways. Our two countries, India and the UK, have gleaned considerable experience in fighting the pandemic, and we know the ravages that it continues to inflict on our peoples and our economies. But in the midst of all this, we have also forged strong cooperation and partnership in fighting the disease and building the means to resist and overcome it as we bring the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine to millions in both our countries and across many, particularly in the developing world. Now, the relationship between our two democracies is of long standing. It's been forged by history, and it has been complex, difficult, and in some ways, mutually reaffirming. Today, we describe it as a comprehensive strategic partnership, although its promise, as many say, has been belied. They say it needs turbocharging. Terms like the living bridge are used to refer to the people-to-people ties forged through a few centuries and through migration. It is truly amazing for us who live outside Britain to see how the 2 million strong diaspora of persons of South Indian heritage have blended into the multi-hued tapestry of daily life in your country, where every institution of British life has so many people of South Asian origin contributing to your welfare and development, and where chicken malai tikka becomes as British as the English rose. There is an emotional groundswell here that I do not feel in any other country, even in the United States, that has nearly 4 million persons of Indian origin. And yet, I have observed that very few Britons know very much or even anything about your colonial past in India and the legacies of British rule. There has been insufficient catharsis about these matters, a catharsis that can make for more empathy and understanding about India on your sceptred isle. Maybe it can happen in our 21st century, and the young people in both countries, young people, as we see here today, you can show the way, which is why we need our students to interact more with each other. And Karan just referred to it in his very important remarks. We need more mobility for young, intelligent, and innovative minds, more research and educational collaboration. And this has to be the two-lane bridge that works in both directions, to and from the UK, and where global Britain meets global India. The relationship, as I mentioned, has tended to underperform and underwhelm. Post-Brexit, we know that Britain is herself reviewing and redefining her outlook on the world, on trade, strengthening the global community of democracies and plural, inclusive societies that celebrate and safeguard human values, fight terror, safeguard peace and security, understand the importance of mobility and migration, multilateral cooperation, climate, global health, and in deepening old partnerships like the one with India. As mentioned earlier, Prime Minister Johnson will visit India later this year, and Prime Minister Modi has been invited to come to Cornwall in June for the meeting of the G7 countries. That is going to be seen as a D10 or a conclave of 10 democracies, with the presence of Australia, South Korea, and India. And later in the year, our two prime ministers will meet again during the COP26 in Glasgow. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab of the UK has recently completed a very good visit to India. Now, we in India see post-Brexit Britain as struggling to bring more coherence, clarity, and concentration to key bilateral relationships and being a significant enabler for a rule-based international order. We see this as a time of churning and considerable flux for your country. You remind me in many ways about that character, in Luigi Pirandello that is perhaps yet unrealized, but seeking realization. Now, India is a dynamic and resurgent country today. I know you will acknowledge that. Very different from that which you departed in 1947. In many ways, Britain has to relearn India. When I see the manner in which our relationship, India's, with the United States has evolved and developed since the 2000s, the contrast with our ties with the UK is stark and unflattering. There's much work to be done, and it must involve a closer, much more granular and candid dialogue between our two countries, India and the UK. We have a much stronger strategic partnership with France, for instance, in defense, civil nuclear, and in space, and France sees India as a key and leading strategic partner in Asia and the Indo-Pacific. We in India also are sensitive to what we see as the UK tendency to use the bully pulpit with us on issues like Kashmir and the tendency to elide on the subject of cross-border terrorism and how it affects our national security and the well-being of our society and our people. Conflating India with Pakistan hardly helps. We're not asking you to choose between the two countries, but I do believe you need that nirvana moment when you understand the promise, the potential, the weight, and the relevance of India, as the US did from the waning Clinton years and then on to the presidency of George W. Bush and through successive US administrations thereafter. Trust us more. And we also need a more substantive and textured dialogue on China, a strategic dialogue. East of Suez for Britain today cannot mean the road to Mandalay. We all know how unreal that is, but a focus on the Indo-Pacific, which is more than the Asia-Pacific, because the term represents a confluence of the Indian and Pacific Oceans from the east coast of Africa to the west coast of the Americas. As Peter Ricketts said recently, global Britain needs content. There is a view that Brexit has tended to suck out a lot of oxygen and you need revitalization. My hope is that Britain fulfills the promise of remaining open to the rest of the world, and I hope India and Britain can be key strategic partners who can really activate that concept of a special relationship in the decade ahead. Neither of our two countries fit into easy slots. Each of us has tremendous assets: democratic, diplomatic, military, intelligence and development expertise, medical and pharmaceutical, technological strengths, the capacity to deliver humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And such assets can be further strengthened, empowered, and synergized if we work together, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. I do not subscribe to the view put forward in a recent paper by a leading British think tank that India and Britain are awkward counterparts or rivals, as if there are contested domains between us. Although I do agree that we live in a splintered world. Imperial legacy, as someone said recently, cannot be a reference point, although I know that many British friends may deny this is the case. And neither do I question India's commitment to democratic values and respect for diversity, because in my view, the bigotry of a few across religions does not define the idea of India and the spirit of live and let live that is inscribed in our basic metabolism as a people. As Prime Minister Johnson said recently, therefore, we need a quantum leap in bilateral relations, a leap of faith, a leap of substance. Ties in trade and investment are also key, and Karan has referred to that, and the fact that our businesses and investors and entrepreneurs know each other well. But trade has been a disappointment. The figures are underwhelming, to say the diplomatic least. Look at the quantum of our trade with the United States that has grown exponentially over the last decade. Today, it's close to 150 billion US dollars, and the US is our largest trading partner. I know the scale with Britain will be different, but there is much scope definitely for pushing up the trajectory of growth in our trade. I also know that the prospects for free trade agreements in a world that is increasingly questioning the good of such arrangements may not be promising. But India and Britain must arrive at mutual agreement about the way forward on such issues as the mobility of professionals, students, and researchers, trade and services, improving the ease of doing business in each other's economies, and promoting, as I said, a trajectory of growth in bilateral trade. Building a partnership on technologies for the future in cooperation with other sister democracies, drawing strength from our respective capabilities is also necessary if we are to deal competently with the threat of techno-authoritarianism from China. Our slogan, therefore, and concluding, should be that the good must become better, and eventually the better best where our relations are concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rao. That was absolutely fantastic, and it touched upon a number of things that we're going to come back to in due course. Could I just say, for those who are watching on Facebook, that you could keep your questions coming. We're just going to open this up for discussion now, but in between we will ensure that the questions that you're posing will definitely be asked. So please do keep them coming. Before we start though, Lord Bilimoria, would you like to respond to anything that Ambassador Rao said, especially given your work in the education sector? Because there's a wider context over here that we have to discuss now, and that is the whole question of trade deals, etc., within the context of bilateral relations, foreign policy, etc. So there's there's that context, but separately from that, Ambassador Rao made the point about Britain needing to relearn about India. Now we know over here that there is this whole, there are so many things that are happening in the name of decolonizing knowledge and decolonizing this and that, and LSE itself has several things, and other universities do, Birmingham does. So was there something you just wanted to say in response to the several things that Ambassador Rao? I wanted to give you the first chance.
Narendra, thank you so much. And Nirupama, what a fabulous speech. I mean, really excellent, wide-ranging, and that was absolutely fantastic. I just want to pick out a few things, if I may. And yes, we both went to school in the Nilgiris. I think you were at Lawrence, weren't you? And I was at Hebron. Or were you at Nazareth or St. Hilda's? No.
I was at St. Joseph's.
St. Joseph's,
St.
there we are.
Joseph's.
Yeah,
Yes,
I couldn't,
yes.
well, the biggest school in the Nilgiris, I think. Yes. So my brother went to Lawrence.
Okay.
So yes, so you mentioned the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, here's an example. What I've seen in this pandemic has worked as collaboration. And when governments have tried to do things top down, it hasn't worked. When government has worked with business, and when government, business, and universities have worked together, it's been so powerful. Whether it's in testing, the best example is vaccines. Our V-Day was on the 8th of December. Kate Bingham, the head of our task force, the vaccine task force, was appointed just 6 months before that. Empowered by Boris Johnson, go there, buy the vaccines, leave it up to you. I'll give you the resource, do it. In 6 months, we got 350 million vaccines spread out across different manufacturers, and the first one in 6. It's phenomenal. I think it would not have happened without everyone collaborating. And look at the beauty of Oxford, one of the top universities in the world, collaborating with AstraZeneca, a British-Swedish company headquartered in Cambridge, to come up with this vaccine for the world on an affordable basis that can be stored at refrigerator temperature. And here's the other dimension. My fellow Zoroastrian Parsis, Cyrus and Alda Poonawalla, great friends who the whole of India are proud of the Serum Institute of India, the largest vaccine manufacturers in the world. They have a 1 billion dose contract for the Oxford AstraZeneca. So this is the power that Nirupama spoke about. If we can have educational collaboration, not just exchange of students, but on the research level. At the UK-India Roundtable, which I was a member of, we came up with an initiative called UKERI, which is a UK-India Research Initiative. That's gone into 3 phases, where academics from UK University, Indian University, pair up on a project funded by the governments, and it's led to so many collaborations. And by the way, cross-border collaboration and cross-university collaboration, the field-weighted index of a university doing it individually goes up 3 times minimum, sometimes more. And I couldn't agree with that more. The living bridge that you spoke about, the 30 million Indians that live around the world, wow, I'm just so proud of how well we are doing in every field you can imagine, whether it's in politics. Look at our cabinet table here in the UK, whether it's Rishi Sunak, whether it's Preeti Patel, whether it's Alok Sharma. I mean, it's extraordinary how well we're Defense Corporation. Now, what really stronger strategic relationship with France than it does with the UK? That should not be the case. It really upset me when you said that. But if that is the reality, that's the task that we have. And the other point you made is the Indo-Pacific. Britain is about to join the CTPPP. Now, the CTPP, that trading bloc, the UK does 100 billion pounds worth of trade with that bloc, more than we do with China. So if we join that, it's going to be very good for us. But we've got to look at it with the lens, not of Asia Pacific, but as you rightly say, Indo-Pacific. And I think that's really, really important. And there's a lot more I could come back on, by the way. And in development terms, you made the point that we both do a lot of development work. Look at the way India already has exported vaccines all around the world, millions of doses. I think it's now almost over 10 million to countries like the Maldives, Mauritius, Bangladesh, now to the Caribbean. It's marvelous. It's absolutely marvelous, saying, look, we're not, it's for the whole world. We're going to do it for the whole world. I think that is really inspirational. Thank you.
And I think yesterday they've just announced that they're going to send the vaccines to several African nations as well.
That's right. That's right.
That was yesterday. Before we continue, Lord Bilimoria, if you could just say for the benefit of the audience what CTPPP is. A lot of people may not know what it is, since you mentioned.
It's the Trans-Pacific Trading Bloc, which is made up of 11 countries. And around that region, including Japan, and we will be joining that. So that's a huge opportunity for us.
It's the Comprehensive, Progressive, Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so we have questions coming on Facebook, and we'll get to them soon. Sanam, would you like to say something?
Oh, thank you, both of you. It was such a delight to listen to this wide-ranging view, summarized so eloquently, covering so many different aspects of this UK-India partnership. And perhaps, and I'll pose this question to the both of you, but perhaps to start with Ambassador Rao, what are the possible asks in a trade deal? And since we've spoken of a trade deal, that India seeks from the UK, because I sort of feel that we've got a lot more known from the UK side, but not so much tangibly known from the Indian side. And then I'd like Lord Bilimoria, please, to respond to that and answer it from the British perspective. What is it that UK seeks? But let's start with the Indian side first, Ambassador Rao. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, Sanam, I must tell you that I don't have any, way to claim the prerogative of knowing what goes on, in the mind of the government, because I've been retired for a long time now. But I would assume that post-Brexit, and after Britain has left the Brexit, and the fact that this introduces a completely new dimension, not only where Britain is concerned, but where countries that do business with Britain are concerned, and India being a leading country in that context. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense for India and Britain to sit down and negotiate a bilateral trading arrangement that can not only preserve all the benefits that are in place from this old relationship, but also look at the challenges and the changes that have come about because of the post-Brexit situation. And we've talked, and Karan also talked about, research and innovation, technology, building new technology partnerships, making it easier to negotiate trade and services, enabling more mobility and migration of trained professionals, which has always been a sticking point, I think, in a lot of these arrangements. And, the energy partnerships that we're thinking of. But I would like to give a specific and predominant emphasis to what we can do in the field of technology, because in this splintered world that we are, all of us looking at the moment, this division of the spheres, I mean, you have this hemispheric division literally between techno-authoritarians and techno-democracies. And India and Britain very comfortably fall within the ambit of techno-democracies. And we have to think of a new blueprint for cooperation on technology, whether it comes to telecommunication, whether it comes to artificial intelligence, whether it comes to data services, all that I think falls within the ambit of what we need to discuss.
Thank you, Ambassador Rao. That's actually really interesting. And perhaps, Lord Bilimoria, before you respond to that, could you also explain for the benefit of the audience and for me, where we are currently in the negotiation cycle, to the degree that you can let us know in terms of, and all these terms that we are floating about. You mentioned yourself this potential of a free trade agreement between both nations, but also we hear the term enhanced trade partnership being discussed at the minute as a sort of stepping stone to this ultimate FTA. So would you help us please decode these words and what they mean in real sort of normal speak, and also respond to the British side of what is it that the UK sees, in addition to technology that Ambassador Rao mentioned, as the sort of core building focus blocks of this relationship?
Yes, again, with the United States of America, we're very keen, the UK, to have a free trade agreement with the USA. And we want it. I'm sure now with President Biden there, I would hope that he and his team want it. But they are not saying we're going to get it straight away. It might have to go through a stage of a closer comprehensive agreement and then step up to an FTA. So it doesn't necessarily go straight to an FTA. And a lot of these FTAs take a long time to negotiate. The Canadian EU agreement took 8 years to negotiate. And because a free trade agreement is not just about duties and tariffs, it's about movement of people, it's about recognition of qualifications, it's about so many other areas, including security. So I think where India is concerned, we need to get there, but it will probably require 2 steps. I don't see in this year a UK-India free trade agreement being signed. I don't know, Nirupama, if you agree with that or not. I think that's probably unrealistic. We will want to do it, but we're going to get there. But if the will is there to get there, I think we can. What is important about a free trade agreement, there's so many things that need to be sorted out. If you look at India, the restrictions on foreign investment, insurance, we managed finally to get foreign investment and insurance into India, but it's still restricted to 49%. Why can't that be 100%? Defense, investment in defense. Now, this is another area where the UK and India could be really good defense partners. We share so much. We have officer exchanges at the Royal College of Defense Studies, the National Defense College, at the staff colleges. We can have far more defense collaboration, joint exercises, and also in terms of defense itself as an industry. It's a huge industry. We should be working collaboratively. Space. Look at India, what it's doing in space. Now, in the UK, we're getting more and more around space. We've got OneWeb. My friend Sunil Mittal has invested $500 million along with the UK government, into the satellite program OneWeb. So there's You just lost me there. Am I back?
Yeah.
Yes, you're fine. Please go on.
Services. The UK is an 80% services economy. Manufacturing makes up 10% of our economy, but we're very strong in manufacturing. India wants to get up to 25% manufacturing. India is also a services economy. Look at what we can do with services, but at the moment, foreign lawyers cannot operate in India. We can open up legal services that will be to benefit. With the list of companies that I gave you, British companies in India, it's a mixture of manufacturing and services companies. So we've got so much, again, there that we can open up. And the more India opens up as an economy, then the more I think we can do together. And here's an important point. The United Kingdom may be 1% of the world's population. It's still one of the 7 largest economies in the world. But here's a very, very important point people miss. We are the 2nd or 3rd largest recipient of inward investment in the world at any one time. And one of the main reasons I think that is because we're in a very open economy. And as long as we stay open and outward looking after Brexit, the partnership with India can only be enhanced.
If I may also just add to that, Karan mentioned defense, and I think defense trade has to be a very important area of focus. And here I'd just like to cite the example of the United States. Traditionally we bought a lot from Russia, but today in the last 10 years, defense trade with the United States, or defense purchases from the United States, now touch a little over 20 billion US dollars. So that is the exponential increase that you have seen. And you have the Defense Trade and Technology Initiative between India and the United States. India has been designated as a major defense partner. We've been given strategic trade authorization, tier 1 status by the United States. So, the restraints and constraints and blockages on account of technology and all those have tended to be removed. So somebody mentioned that with Britain, we need to look at more government-to-government arrangements also in the field of defense trade, so that you not only have make in India, but you also have create in India in this particular field.
Thank you very much. As we keep getting questions, and thank you to the audience for sending questions. Could I invite Ahaan? Ahaan, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Nilanjan. First of all, I just want to say that it's a real privilege for me to be on this panel, and some of the stuff that I've heard already is really eye-opening. And given that I'm a student of politics and philosophy at LSE as well, it's allowed me a lot to understand a lot more of what we actually learn and how that's relating to what's happening out there in the real world today. My question was to the both of you actually was more to do with the paper that Ambassador Rao touched upon in her opening remarks, which was about the Global Britain Global Broker one, which spoke about how the relationship between India and the United Kingdom might be tarnished by the colonial history that exists between the two countries, and how that might actually restrict even post-Brexit UK from having having relationships with India, which may be deeper and more far-reaching than just simply economic trades. So since Ambassador Rao has been in the foreign services, and Lord Bilimoria has worked closely with the government and gone on trade deals, negotiated trade deals with India as well, I wanted to know, does something like a colonial history or the past that India and UK have shared over so many years, does it play a role in the kind of interactions and negotiations that happen, or was this paper merely making a sort of an baseless claim?
Thank you, Ahaan. Ambassador Rao, would you like to go first? In part, I say this also because that my question, my first question, was actually a bit along the lines of what Ahaan has said. You mentioned to it, but I was being judicious in remaining silent because I didn't want to be called out to say that because you have a PhD in history, you're going to ask a question that's connected to history. But it is an important issue. The question of the living bridge that you referred to, I mean, the whole context of the living bridge comes from this whole position of having a long, complex, shared history. And yes, a lot of us do believe, living over here, working in higher education institutions, that, or being involved in the way that Sanam is, in the way that Lord Bilimoria is, that there is a greater and a very urgent need for a more, not just a more nuanced, but a more realistic understanding of the past, because there is a sense in which it informs the present. Now, I was in a meeting in the House of Commons last week, which was talking about decolonizing history textbook curriculum at the school level over here. And one of the panelists said something in one sentence, which was a very, very interesting way of putting it, which is that he said, he's a professor at Cambridge in British history of empire, and he said, someone said that, oh, we need to get rid of the myths that surround India and colonial rule and etc. And his response was, no, we just need to have an accurate history. That's all. And that in itself will act as decolonizing knowledge. So would you like to go first with Ahaan's question, and Lord Bilimoria, you afterward?
Thank you, Nilanjan. I'll be brief. I think this term that you use, decolonizing knowledge, is a very important one. It's very valid, and I think that process of decolonization of the mind has to be put center stage in dealing with this issue of how Britain's imperial history tends to cast, even now, long shadows on this relationship. I'm reminded it's like acid reflux. It just tends to, come up from time to time, and how do you deal with it? And definitely, I think people in Britain, especially the younger generation, needs to understand this history more. It's not just enough if, we in India, Shashi Tharoor had that excellent study, and I noticed that a couple of new books that have also come up on the subject. But we need more than that. I think the history textbooks need to be revised and the story needs to be told in a way that there is understanding. And as I mentioned, there is that creation of mutual empathy between our two countries. I don't believe that in India, we're unlike the Chinese. I mean, having been in China, studied China for so many years, we never talk of the century of national humiliation the way the Chinese talk about it. And we were humiliated, in so many ways, and disadvantaged and disempowered in so many ways by that colonial history. But perhaps we don't have such long memories in India. And, we look to the future, which is a good thing, I think, for this relationship, whatever happened in the past. But I think as far as Britain is concerned, particularly post-Brexit, you need a little more soul-searching and introspection on this subject.
Well, just following on, Shashi Tharoor is a good friend, and he asked me to launch his book, Inglorious Empire, over here in the UK. And it's the first time a book has been written after a speech. Normally you make speeches about your book, and this was a speech he gave at the Oxford Union, which went viral, and then he decided to write a book about it. Now, I just want to give the perspective from where the UK is concerned. And just earlier today, I'm the chair of the Memorial Gates Council. Now, I don't know how many of you who are at the LSE have actually even seen or noticed the Memorial Gates, which are at Hyde Park Corner, just outside Buckingham Palace. When you go down Constitution Hill, you've got the 4 sandstone pillars and a chhatri, a pavilion on the side. And inside, in the roof of the chhatri, are the names of the Victoria Cross and George Cross winners. And these gates commemorate the service and the sacrifice of the 5 million volunteers. No one was forced to serve. Volunteers from South Asia, at that time, India, and Africa, and the Caribbean. 5 million. You think about it, without those 5 million, there's no way the Allies would have won the First World War or the Second World War. We may not be experiencing the freedoms we have today in the world. And we should not forget that. But how many British school children even know about the fact that there were 5 million, huge majority from what is today India, who voluntarily served, and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands gave their lives. And they don't know that. And I think they need to know it. And I think the British Asians, the 1.5 to 2 million that we have of Indians who live, for example, that those children, many of them who were born in the UK, they need to know about that history. And that history is inspiring, and that history is something we should never forget, and we must remember.
Thank you, Lord Bilimoria. We don't want to go down this road because this is a very, very interesting discussion in itself, and perhaps I can arm twist Sanam into having a separate discussion just on this in due course about the whole question of history and decolonizing knowledge, etc. But Lord Bilimoria, you would know very well that very recently in Question Time, we had a very serious episode where a particular person actually said, on the basis of seeing one Sikh soldier in a First World War movie, that this was unnecessary wokeness. Now, we don't want to go into that discussion, but that is the level of ignorance that some people, I will say some people, given how many people I have met in this country in the field of history, still have, which is unfortunate. It's also, for someone like me, it's worrying because my PhD is on pre-Mughal history, for which I went ahead and learned a new language. I learned Persian and then did a PhD. And I then find myself carrying the double cross, not only of Indian history, but of Indian Islamic history. And it's a very, very interesting situation to be in. And given that I did my PhD from SOAS, you step out of SOAS one day and you realize that the world outside is really not SOAS. You know, it's important. I'm going to bring in some questions from the audience. I am going to say though, and this is in gratitude to both our speakers, that we have people joining us from Bardhaman in West Bengal, and we have people joining us from Brazil. I think that says something. Could I ask a question? Ambassador Rao, this is directly to you. You brought in the question of China. You have served in China. It was a very important reason we invited you, because I knew that you had served in China. And you had a very, very eventful stay in China when you were ambassador, including the earthquake that happened at that time. Now in 2021, we now know that, I mean, on the one hand, there are territorial disputes between China and India at the moment. They're going on at the moment. But more importantly, China's increasing presence in South Asia, in the South Asian region, in the name of trade, has fundamentally altered the geostrategic geopolitics of the region. China has created bases for itself, trade bases, but they're nonetheless Chinese bases, and whether they are in Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, in Pakistan. It has the Belt and Road Initiative. So you literally have a ring around India at the moment by sea and by land, which is called the Dragon's Ring. And India and China, very interestingly, are also competitors for investment in Africa, as you know. My question to you is, when the United Kingdom is looking to do a trade deal with India post-Brexit, and bear in mind, and Lord Bilimoria referred to the European Union, you referred to France. Bear in mind that Angela Merkel is pushing very, very hard to get the German deal through before she leaves, and her departure is not very far away. When Britain is looking to do a deal with India, how far do you think foreign policy relations, Britain and China, India and China, Britain and India, will function within the very uniquely conflicting contexts of the history that Britain shares with China on the one hand, with whom also it has a very long and complicated history, including its interest in Hong Kong, and with India, which it left in 1947, and yet, you know, considers the idea of a living bridge very, very important. And I dare say, living in this country, that the idea of the living bridge is not entirely misplaced. So there is a very live connection. My question to you is that your greatest strength and your life's experience has been in foreign policy, and you have served in China. How do you think, or how far do you think this negotiation of trade or any future relations between Britain and India post-Brexit will have the shadow of China's increasing presence in the region and a concomitant reduction of India's strength in South Asia, in the region, because China's presence has fundamentally altered the dynamics of South Asian geopolitics and geostrategy? Thank you.
Well, you know, as we see it in India, if you look at the preceding years and the fact that the relationship between India and Britain didn't, you know, achieve the potential that everybody agrees that it has. One of the reasons perhaps was Britain's, I would say, quite large focus on China. I mean, that's the way we saw it. And Britain indeed did spend a lot of time on that relationship with China. And talking about issues that affected us, and since, you know, my work on China has had a lot to do with Tibet and the boundary we share with China, I recall that moment in 2008 when the then Foreign Secretary David Miliband announced that, that Britain recognized Chinese sovereignty over Tibet, where until then, the word used was suzerainty. Suzerainty may be a very archaic term, in the 21st century, but certainly in the context of the history of Tibet and Britain's relations with Tibet, it did have a certain resonance and a certain relevance, and all that was, just taken off the screen, erased in 2008. So in one fell stroke, I think that decision exposed the whole question of what the future of the McMahon line would be. I'm not going into that history, but that was one issue. Today, I think the rise of China and the threat, as I put that in quotes, from China in our region, and the way countries across the world perceive this threat affects Britain's relations with China today. And you've seen what Britain has been saying on Hong Kong for one, and the decision on Huawei, and the British statements on Xinjiang, and a lot of countries around the world, especially in the West, have certain views on Chinese treatment of the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. So all this has introduced a degree of increasing distance, an increasing degree of distance between China and Britain. So will that affect the negotiations that Britain conducts with India post-Brexit on a trade deal or on strengthening the special relationship with India? I think today it's very difficult to shed the China association in anything we do. I mean, it does hover over our relations with the United States, India's relations with the United States, the whole question of where we are on strategic autonomy when it comes to our relations with countries like the US, given the China factor and the complications in our relations with China, especially as far as Ladakh and the face-off there is concerned. So I think the China factor will exert a large influence. But when it comes to doing business between our two countries, when it comes to strengthening the living bridge, when it comes to ensuring that it's more easy to do business with each other, I think the foundations are already there. We need to build on those foundations. And if the way we build better on those foundations, I think, will help both our countries and will also help create more balance vis-a-vis China.
Thank you. So I'll take this now to Lord Bilimoria and ask you, Lord Bilimoria, about looking at the China factor, but looking at India's response to the recent activities that China has undertaken in India. India has responded with a form of protectionism. It responded with Atmanirbharta, being self-sufficient, and that's all well and good. But when you juxtapose that with the alternative policy of Make in India, where India wants to drive foreign direct investment, foreign institutional investment into its borders, in this sort of, when you put these two policies against each other, they almost seem sort of counterintuitive. Now, is that something that Britain is, battling as it seeks to make these trade partnerships with India, or is this something that you just find a way around, and that's something diplomats are well versed with doing?
If you go back, Nirupama just made the point about 2008 and David Miliband. Well, if you go back 3 years before that, in 2005, I went on a delegation with Prime Minister Tony Blair, and we took over a British Airways jumbo jet, huge delegation, and we christened the plane Blair Force One. So we went on Blair Force One from the UK to China to Beijing. And we spent some time there in Beijing with state meetings, bilateral meetings. They rolled out the red carpet for us. And all the official meetings were done through interpreters. We'd be sitting across, and after the official meeting finished, the same minister would speak to you in English afterwards, but in the meeting would speak through interpreters. We could not fault the welcome they gave us. We got on the plane and went from Beijing to Delhi, and you could just visibly see the British delegation when they got to India, how they just almost felt at home. People were relaxed, were on the same wavelength, people were communicating. You know, we've got the, Nirupama said, that foundation is there. We just need to build on it. And we are democracies. We are the strongest, you know, we're the mother of democracies, modern democracies anyway, in the UK, and India's the biggest democracy in the world. And India's democracy has time and again shown its robustness, and the people speak and it works every single time. You know, that is the underpinning strength that we have, and all the other commonalities we have in terms of the rule of law that we should never take for granted. A free and vibrant press in both countries that we should never take for granted. All these things that we have, being outward looking. And that's what we need to step up to, a strategic partnership that is way ahead of what Nirupama said with the French. If they can do it with defense, if they can do it with civil nuclear, if they can do it with space, why can't the UK do it and more, with this underpinning of this wonderful emotional bridge that we have, not just between the Indians who are in the UK and India, of course that's there, but between the whole of Britain and India. There is that wonderful connection. Let's embrace it. Let's make more of it.
Okay, thank you very much, Lord Bilimoria. I'm going to bring in a couple of questions from the audience now, and then we can continue with the discussion. But there are quite a few, so I need to bring them in slowly. One, I'll tell you the second one first, because I want to give both of you a bit of time to think about it, because it's an interesting question. This is to both of you. If you had the chance, what is the one thing you would recommend to your respective prime ministers to ensure that, as a policy matter, to ensure that trade quadruples to 100 billion? If you had the option of making one recommendation, Ambassador Rao in the field of foreign policy, Lord Bilimoria in the field of trade. So you have time to think about this. I'll bring in a second question, which was actually the first question. So thank you, Sender, for waiting for so long. I'm not announcing the names of the people who are asking questions, because we have not taken permission to announce names. So we are treating all questions as anonymous. The question is to Lord Bilimoria. Do you believe that this commitment of both UK and India to different sectors of climate preservation is polarized in specific areas in both countries? And with the increasing activism of youth organizations, since you made this point about the interest that the younger generation has about climate and environment, could this look to a future of more widespread distribution from being polarized in certain areas? Lord Bilimoria, would you like to go first?
I will try and answer the question in the way that I've understood it, because there may be another angle to it that I haven't picked up on. But I think with the whole area of climate change, there is, you start from the basis that the UK is responsible for just 1% of emissions in the world, 1% of the world's population, a very small percentage of its emissions. Yet we can take leadership in this issue, as we're going to be doing with COP26, leadership in helping and embracing and partnering with the whole world to get to net zero by 2050. So we've got a big role to play. India is a huge country, 1.3 billion people, and India is growing rapidly, and India needs the energy, and India will say, okay, well, maybe we can't. We need to use some of the carbon energy at the moment, whereas you're going off. I mean, we're using more for our electricity. We're not using conventional. I think it's a minority now for our electricity in the UK. Now, India will want to get there, and I think India's intentions are absolutely right there, and has made that commitment, and particularly in the area of solar, is taking the lead. So I don't think there is any polarization there. There's a mistiming, maybe, but in time, the intention is absolutely clear where I'm concerned. Now here, even China, we're looking at what commonality can we have with China, and working, we have to work with China. And in the area of climate change is a huge area, because even China has now made a commitment of 2060. Now that's a start. That's terrific, and we can work together with China on that. On the question of the youth, the way I see it is that what needs to, I don't want to answer the second question first, but this has got a big part of the second question, that India's youth, it is a young country, not just young in terms of 1947, it's less than a century old as a country, but it's young in demographic terms as well. And that young population gives India huge dynamism as long as they're given the opportunity. And as long as India is an aspirational country where anyone can get anywhere, regardless of your race, religion, background, you can make it in India because there's that opportunity to excel. And that you can see it every day in India. Those people are coming up, self-made entrepreneurs is fantastic. So I think if we continue to allow that environment, an aspirational environment, and the UK didn't have that. When I came to the UK as a student in the 1980s, I was told by my family and friends, if you decide to stay on and work after you study, you will never get to the top because as a foreigner, there'll be a glass ceiling and you will not be allowed to get to the top. And they were absolutely right. I'm ashamed to say. Today, they'd be completely wrong. Today in Britain, anyone can get to the top regardless of race, religion, or background. A glass ceiling has been shattered. So if you've got those two aspirational societies in the UK and India together, that's very powerful.
Thank you. Would you like to answer the other question as well? What would be your one policy recommendation to your Prime Minister?
You want me to go first? Okay, so my one would be this. The other commonality we have between the UK and India is since India's liberalization in 1991, what has been unleashed more than anything else is India's entrepreneurial spirit. India is a country of entrepreneurs. And those entrepreneurs had been curbed in a protected, inward-looking country all those years, perhaps with the best of intentions, but that entrepreneurial spirit was just suppressed. It has now been unleashed. And in the UK, similarly, since the 1980s, the entrepreneurial spirit has been unleashed. The UK is considered one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. So my one policy recommendation would be if India could open up its economy more and allow the inward investment from the UK to come in even more than it is now, and partner, and I'm not saying deregulate, you need good, strong regulation, but if we have a great free trade agreement that enables that flourishing of entrepreneurship, then we can quadruple very, very quickly and catch up with what the UK and with the US and India have been doing.
Thank you. I was just going to ask for my own clarity. Are you, when you say unleash, are you suggesting literally unleashing, of course, but are you also suggesting that it could be better harnessed? The energy that come from both directions alongside opening up more for mutual collaborations, et cetera, and play on the Make in India point that Sanam made. Is that what?
Yes, and the harnessing, by the way, can come in many forms. Somebody's got a microphone on and that's not on mute. That's, I don't know where that's, yes, hello, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So what I mean by harnessing, and this can be very practical terms as well, the more you encourage people to travel between the two countries, the more people see the opportunity on the ground. Now that could initially start with tourism. So now more and more, I mean, you just picture a plane to Britain in the old days. You know, you'd have the occasional British face, you know, English face on the plane. Otherwise, it'd be full of Indians going back home or Indians going back to India. Now it's the other way around because there are lots of people going to India to experience India. And the more we do that, it has a byproduct of increasing business and trade as well. So we just got to bring the countries closer together and just encourage it in every aspect. And governments have a big role to be a catalyst in enabling that to happen.
I might just add a quick thought onto that, Lord Bilimoria. Aside from NISAO, I obviously work as well, and I work as a consultant in the investment management industry. And a few years ago, I took a delegation on behalf of one of the largest British asset managers, who also has a large strategic joint venture in India in asset management, of about 20 odd investment specialists and sales directors, all sort of in the mutual fund industry, in order to get them acquainted to India. And we took them through this, you know, very large business as well as socio-cultural sort of welcome to India, including things like studying the Dabbawalas in Mumbai, including things like, taking them in March and taking them to Rajasthan for a Holi celebration, including all of that, but also settling that in the larger context of understanding the Indian mindset and the Indian culture. So I think if the government, and perhaps this is one of our requests and recommendations, if both governments can work on, as you say, some form of a travel corridor, but in ways that can actually let Indians know more about Britain and the Brits know more about India, I think that will be of some great help, because I think there's a statistic, something like 80% of young British people don't really know what India is all about. And that is something Ambassador Rao alluded to earlier. So I think that would be something we would strongly recommend and request that you, both on CBI behalf, but also with your various hats on, invest in.
Absolutely. And if I may very quickly make another point, and it works the other way as well. Why is it that since President Xi's visit to the UK a few years ago, that the 2-year multiple entry visa for Chinese visitors, business and tourist, came down from over £350 down to £80? And that's been the case. Whereas with India, I've tried time again and again and said, reduce the Indian visa rate to the same as the Chinese. It still has not happened. Now, just imagine if it makes it that much more affordable, you're going to encourage that many more Indians who are going to come across to the UK as business and tourist visitors, which will help doing what you just said, Sanam, and what I was talking about. Well, we've got to keep pushing for that, and I won't give up.
Thank you. Ambassador Rao, what would be your one policy recommendation to your Prime Minister?
Well, first of all, let me say I completely agree with all that Karan has said. I couldn't have said it better. So I subscribe to his views entirely. As far as the policy advice that I would give to my Prime Minister, first of all, both the Prime Ministers have spoken on a number of occasions in the recent past and said that they have a very ambitious roadmap as far as this relationship is concerned. So I believe that augurs well for the future. So all I would say is that, based also on what we discussed here today, firstly, suspend disbelief. Just suspend disbelief about, each other. Secondly, don't be too mired in the past, because, we tend to get stuck there. And thirdly, be prepared to make that quantum leap. Prepare a strategy for that quantum leap, and just gird yourselves to approach that.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rao. We are going to bring in a few more questions. We have questions raining, and this is being live streamed on 2 platforms, on the NISAO platform as well as the LSE South Asia Center platform. So we have questions coming from various places, and they're wonderful questions. Someone has Lord Bilimoria, someone has also thanked the UKERI program. So there you go. I'm going to, before I ask the next question, I am going to bring in one more very important theme that Ambassador Rao mentioned, which is the Indo-Pacific. Now, the Indo-Pacific, and this is a question, this is a point to both of you at the same time, and if you could keep your answers brief, then we can take on more questions. The Indo-Pacific is a very, very important arena of activity for China. We should not in any way be have any sort of confusion about that. There is Taiwan, there is North Korea, there is the world's reactions to these presences. China has been found in the South China Sea, which the United States objected to, etc. I'm bringing back the question of China over here, Ambassador Rao, principally because in this context, I do want to mine your experience with the United States, which now under President Biden will have, we imagine, a different approach to India, or will it, than the Trump administration did. My question to you in the context of the Indo-Pacific is, given how close the United States and the United Kingdom are, and given that the United Kingdom now has the freedom to enter into various kinds of trade deals, including with the United States as well as with India, And given the recently accelerated activity, geopolitical, geostrategic, and otherwise, in the Indo-Pacific, as you yourself mentioned, how far is the China factor, and I will explain to you what I mean by the China factor, how far is the China factor going to play into what kind of trade deals and foreign policy bilateral relations the two countries may come up with, UK and India, or for that matter, United States and India. When I say China factor, what I mean is that there has always been, for the longest time, a desire to ensure that China does not overpower the region. And China has defied all those attempts and has slowly made its presence felt not only in South Asia, but also in the Indo-Pacific, and has latterly, especially in the last 12 months, been quite assertive about that presence. So my question to you is, how much is the perception of China going to be an instrumental factor in foreign policy, bilateral and trade relations between the United States and India, but more importantly, the United Kingdom and India, given the closeness that the United Kingdom has with the United States' agenda? Thank you.
You know, in 1962, after the conflict with China, our then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru said, there can be no non-alignment vis-a-vis China. And I believe today, when it comes to China and the situation in the Indo-Pacific, nobody can really be neutral about China. You're either with them or not with them. Although I know that the ASEAN countries, you know, the countries who are members of ASEAN, they have a slightly more ambivalent view about China. I think the word to use there is ambivalence. But the fact is that the China factor is going to weigh quite preponderantly on anything we do when it comes to relations with key partners. And there I would mention the United States, with Japan. Look at what we're doing within the quadrilateral security dialogue, India, Japan, the United States, Australia, and India. Has, of course, we don't say that this is directed against China. Perhaps it was only former Secretary of State Pompeo who was a little less, you know, circumspect about mentioning China. But the other countries really don't mention China. But there is the fact that China is the 800-pound gorilla, you know, in the room, literally. Now, when it comes to Britain in the Indo-Pacific, we're all waiting to see the unveiling of what Britain's Indo-Pacific strategy is going to be. But there's already talk about, I mean, we already know that ships of the British Navy do come to this region, and they have been doing freedom of navigation operations in the past also. And this carrier battle group led by HMS Queen Elizabeth it's been announced that they will visit this year, and they will come to the region, and who knows whether they will have any contact and exercises with India. We don't know that as yet. But the fact is, you know, this group will have anti-aircraft destroyers and anti-submarine frigates, in addition to the largest aircraft carrier in the British Navy today. So it's just more than showing the flag, I think. It has a lot to do with Britain's interest in the region, you know, the trading relationships that you want to build, and the fact that you want, and like all of us, like all the countries that see the need for freedom of navigation, to keep the sea lines of communication open, because so much of the world's trade goes through this region, the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So this is going to be a key arena, a key area of focus, and definitely I think the Chinese bear some responsibility for it, because this whole question of a rule-based international order devolves on how we create that balance. And as Kurt Campbell said recently in an article in Foreign Affairs, how we create that sense of balance and legitimacy when it comes to dealing with the future of this region.
Lord Bilimoria, the same question to you about the China factor, but I do just want to add a rider to it, which is, I'm very keen to hear, as are those in the audience, your views on how much trade deals are intertwined with foreign policy between UK and India in the post-Brexit scenario. Thank you.
Yes, so just answering both those, it always goes hand in hand. Your trade deals are never in isolation. Your trade deals have to be looked at in the whole. And as I said, it's to do with movement of people, it's linked to security, it's linked to every aspect of your relationship. And again, let's make this point. A free trade agreement on its own is all very well. It's then what you make of it. It's what do businesses actually make of those free trade agreements. And that again is the role government has to be a catalyst to make sure that businesses in both the bilateral countries involved make the most of it. We've got a big role in organizations like the UK India Business Council, which I help with, I'm the founding chair, can have a big role to play. Both missions, in India, the UK has one of the largest diplomatic missions in the world. And a lot of them are trade focused in cities like Chandigarh and Hyderabad, Bangalore, all over the UK, India. So that has, the government has a role to play. But can you imagine the dream scenario where the UK gets a free trade deal with the United States of America? The UK and India have a free trade deal, and the UK joins the CPTPP, the Trans-Pacific Trade Deal. Just look at that, right across the world. You will have India and the UK at the heart of it in that relationship. That's very powerful. But linked to that, what about the security arrangements? It's all very well having exchange of officers. It's all very well having, as Nirupama spoke about, the Quad, and you have joint exercises, which is very important. Why not take it? What about taking it one step further? You've got the Five Eyes at the moment with Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United States, and the UK. You have NATO, which is a phenomenal organization. Now, when will India, let's say we have partnership taking it to the strategic level that Nirupama talked about, of the UK and India having a strategic partnership at that level where you're really close partners and you work together in that way. And I'll give you a small example. My father, who retired as the Commander-in-Chief of the Central Army in India, when he was a colonel, he was posted to the UK, to the British Army as the Indian Army liaison officer, actually posted within the British Army. And every month he would go to London to the High Commission and give his report, and the army is completely transparent, sharing knowledge and learning from what was happening. That post was removed by India some years ago because of some official in the Ministry of Defense. Those are the sort of links that we need to have where you're embedded and work closely together. You share knowledge and information, you become real partners at a strategic level. We can do so much more.
Lord Bilimoria, speaking of this strategic partnership, as you can imagine, there are a number of questions about the immigration aspect of the trade deal and of this very special partnership. And there are very many, but I'll summarize them into two parts. The first one is, much has been spoken of immigration, sort of India wanting better immigration for its professionals, for its students, etc., into the UK, and that mobility to be increased from India, in some ways in return for the access to the Indian markets. So that's on the table. So in that round, the question then is, given that the UK has already very recently transformed its immigration into a points-based system, given that you and I, as you mentioned, campaigned quite extensively for the post-study work visa, which for 2 or 3 years, students who come to study to the UK should now get, what more can Britain offer on an immigration standpoint to India that will enable, that will be of interest to Indians? That's one half of the question. The second half of the question, in the same vein, and it's something I've often felt, is, we have this standard script, if I may use those words, where lots of talented Indian students will do their undergraduation, say they'll become engineers from the IITs of India, then go on to do their MBAs in the Harvards and the Ivy League institutions in the States, and actually then go on to become the Sundar Pichais and the Satya Nadellas of the world. We haven't quite had the same impact here. So what more is it that the British side can offer to Indian talent to enable that sort of Silicon Valley-esque effect, particularly given that, about half the Indian students who come to the UK study STEM subjects, and STEM subjects are the vacancies that about half the time remain vacant for a very long time in Britain. So over to you on those two questions.
Thank you, Sanam. Yes, with regard to what more can we do to increase mobility, there is this new point-based system, and we're going to now see whether this point-based system works. We fought quite hard to bring the minimum salary threshold down. Originally, it was over £30,000. We've now got it down to just over £25,000. And there can be exceptions to bring it down even lower. So this points-based system should make it easier for Indian professionals to come and work here in the UK. And there's a very clear pathway, in fact, after that, even to permanent residency, should the person wish to do so. So let's see how this works. And I think there are exceptions made for agricultural workers from the European Union, the various exceptions made. But I think they thought through this thing. It's only come into place now. Let's see how it works. And we'll be monitoring it very, very carefully. When Preeti Patel, our Home Secretary, has just announced last week a bespoke youth mobility scheme between India and the UK to encourage two-way flow of students and experts. It'll be really good if that comes into play, because I think youth mobility is phenomenal. We have an exchange program called Erasmus that has existed for years in the European Union as an exchange program from European Union students. You know, there's so many British students who use that program and go and study and spend time at a European university who've never traveled abroad before. And it's the first time they get to go and travel and live abroad. It changes their whole life, the friends they make, their widening of their horizons. So that's the sort of thing we need to do. Now, in terms of addressing the other point that you made, how do we get the students to come here, those same IIT students or wherever they are from India, to come here as opposed to going to the United States of America? And I think it does help that the UK has phenomenal institutions like the LSE, like Oxford and Cambridge and Imperial and University College. And we've got top universities. And we've got to do a better job of marketing and getting them to come here. And at the moment, which is the highest ranked university in the world, it's not Harvard. And I'm an alumnus of Harvard through executive education. I'm very proud of Harvard. It's a phenomenal institution. It's actually Oxford University that is the #1 university in the world today. Which universities won more Nobel Prizes in the world? It's not Harvard, it's not Princeton, it's not Yale, it's Cambridge University. So, a British university, and our quality of our research is outstanding. And I think what we've done with the Oxford vaccine has really put us up on the map over there once again, saying we're the ones leading the way. And I think we've got to do a better job at marketing how brilliant our universities are and get the brightest and the best from India to come here.
Thank you very much, Lord Bilimoria. Ambassador Rao, did you want to come in briefly?
No, I don't want to sound flippant, and I certainly am not being flippant, but Sanam mentioned the Sundar Pichais and the Satya Nadellas. But since I am very much into music, don't forget that India gave Britain Freddie Mercury.
Thank you.
A fellow Zoroastrian Parsi.
I was just going to say that, Lord Bilimoria. I wasn't going to let that go, but thank you for mentioning. Could I just very briefly say, we are going to start wrapping up. We're very grateful to our speakers for their time. We are still getting questions. Please, could I request those who are sending questions to keep your questions direct and brief so we can ask them. Otherwise, I have to read through the entire text to figure out what the question is. We do have a question which is important. It is part of our natural discussion. And I'm going to read out the question in fairness to the person who has asked, but I will put it in a context so it ties up with what we have been talking about. This refers both to Ambassador Rao as well as to Lord Bilimoria. Ambassador Rao, you have said in your opening remarks, as well as later on as well, that India has a long tradition of harmony, of living together, of cross-cultural mixing, etc., of secularism, of your own pursuits, show that your interest in it, etc. Lord Bilimoria, you have also mentioned the similarity of institutions, of rule of law, of freedom of press, and so on and so forth. As both of you would no doubt know, latterly there have been some concerns and differences of opinion about precisely these details between India and the United Kingdom. The question is, and the question is a very, very interesting one, which is, do both of you see any role for the United Kingdom to play in any aspect where such differences may appear, being leveraged through trade deals from both sides. Now, it's important to emphasize on the both sides, because it is important to bear in mind that India, when striking a trade deal, as has been evident in this conversation, India does also have a very strong bargaining position. On the other hand, so does Britain have a strong bargaining position. The good thing is both want a trade deal between one another. Britain is now liberated from the restrictions of the European Union. So do you think that we've discussed trade deals and trade in the context of foreign policy? Can we potentially consider trade deals in the context of politics, contemporary politics, where both countries have an interest, and there have been resonances of contemporary events in India in British politics, most prominently the farmers' protests being raised by a Labour politician here in the House of Commons? Thank you.
Do you want me to come in first, or would you like Karan?
Sure, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. With my, 2 cents on this is that I don't believe trade should be politicized. I don't think trade should be subject to conditionalities. Unless you're dealing with an apartheid South Africa, and there I think a lot of Western countries have a history that wasn't exactly. They didn't come clean on that subject. So let's not go into that. But I think in the current context of the UK and India, I think we should look at how we strengthen the partnership, the comprehensive global partnership between our 2 countries. And the door is open, the future is waiting to come in, as they say. I think we should act on that basis. As far as democracies such as ours are concerned, we all have our good points. We also have our shortcomings, and we have to deal with them. I mean, in the case of India, we're a very young democracy. We're a very complex country. We embrace, as Walt Whitman said, so many multitudes within ourselves. And I think just to create that balance as we move forward, as we grow, as we evolve as a society, I think is a continuing challenge. But I think we are perfectly capable of dealing with these problems and these challenges ourselves. I don't, Indians, I think rightfully so, tend to be sensitive when, when countries and friends from outside, seek to offer prescriptions on how we should deal with this or that. I think that would never work also as far as our bilateral relationship is concerned. So each of us, nobody is perfect. I'm not saying that either of us, I mean, India has issues to deal with within the country, but by and large, you must understand that this is a very, very stable democracy, and the Constitution, the values enshrined in the Constitution still prevail. The vast majority of Indians do subscribe to those values. And I think, our society, our country, the fabric of our democracy is strong, and we will hold together.
Yes, I just to build on what Nirupama said, that I don't think there is a more diverse country than India in the world. Whether you look at it, diversity of terrain, from deserts to mountains to jungles to semi-arid, you've got it all in one country. Whether you look at it, race, whether you look at religion, whether you look at language, I mean, it is the most diverse country by far. And India is a secular, pluralistic country where everyone can practice their religion, everyone can, it's an opportunity for all country. That's part of the Constitution. Now, look at the UK. The UK is less than 15% of the UK are minorities, ethnic minorities. And yet the UK is a country where anyone can aspire and anyone can get anywhere. UK, and again, is a secular, pluralist country. And I go so far to say we do not tolerate difference and tolerate different religions or different people from different countries or backgrounds. We celebrate that diversity. And there's a big difference between tolerance and celebration, because it's that attitude that makes you an open country that can really, really prosper. And I think between two countries, I don't think that one should interfere in another country in that sense. I think the most important underbedding is trust. And that trust is based on mutual respect. And if I may very quickly, one of my professors at Harvard Business School, Francis Fry, described trust as a triangle. To have trust, first you've got to be authentic. Next, you've got to have that logic, the capability to deliver what you're saying for people to trust you. And third, you've got to have the empathy. And that is that I'm not just in it for myself, I'm in it for you as well. So if you have that authenticity, if you have that logic, if you have that empathy, you have that trust. And when you have trust and mutual respect between two countries, wow, you can achieve so much. And India and the UK, what better matching can we have of mutual respect and trust?
And in fact, if I may add to that, in addition to mutual respect and trust and empathy, we need mutual sensitivity also.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Rao. Thank you very much, Lord Bilimoria. Before we wrap up, I'm just going to ask Sanam to say something if she would like to, Sanam.
Oh, no, thank you so much to the both of you. This has been an absolutely fascinating discussion. And you know, Lord Bilimoria, you spoke of diversity in so many senses. This was a session full of diversity of views and neurodiversity, covering so many different aspects. So I am very grateful to the both of you for having taken the time out. I think, you know, just if I might, you know, give a few shameless plugs. You know, we look forward, Lord Bilimoria, to working with CBI, with UKISA on how we can take the graduate route further. Details are still awaited on what the post-study work visa looks like. I know the Home Office is working hard on it, but students like Ahaan, many thousands of students all over the country are waiting eagerly to be able to get absorbed into the British employment sector, to become both job makers as well as job takers. And so we look forward to working with you on that. I want to give one plug-in on the comments and the questions we've received. We've touched based on many of those, but I think it's really heartening to note that more than half of the questions from the young people, including various India societies in the UK, are actually to do with climate change. And this being the year of climate change, when the UK and India, you know, investing so much in this particular area, as is the world, I think that points to a very sort of, as they say, two great nations and one glorious shared future. So I'm sure climate change will play a very big agenda in that. And I think one final and shameless plug, we are, there is now something, and this is also for the benefit of the audience, there is now something in place in the UK, an initiative of Mr Narendra Sharma, Member of Parliament, who also happens to be one of our patrons, called the British South Asian Youth Summit. And in fact, we've worked, and that's a conglomeration of young people from 9 different countries, including Britain and India, to facilitate and foster closer ties on issues like strengthening democratic institutions, on issues like LGBTQ rights in these sort of 9 nations. And we are going to present tomorrow the first lot of findings from discussions to Lord Tariq Ahmed. So I'm really glad that the FCDO is also taking such an institutional interest in the activities of the South Asian nation, particularly Britain and India. And thank you so much to the both of you for joining in.
Thank you, Sanam. It's now my very pleasant duty to thank all of you. It is not a duty at all. I do it very, very happily. But I think for someone like me, it's been so very reassuring to hear so much said so easily and freely about so many strengths that both the countries have, and the very complex relationship that the two countries enjoy, but also the possibilities, the potential that is riding on this entanglement. Thank you very much to Ambassador Nirupama Menon Rao. Thank you. We know that you're joining us and it's late. Please do let us know when your book is published. We'll be very, very happy to talk about it. Thank you very much, Lord Bilimoria. We hope that you will continue to support us, to support students, and we wait to hear about the trade deal living over here. I cannot deny that I'm extremely keen to hear about that. Thank you very much for your time. I know it's very precious. Thank you, Sanam. for collaborating. Thank you to Nisao for collaborating with us. We always benefit from such collaborations, and we reach a much wider audience because of the support that you give, as well as those who are behind you who are supporting this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ahaan. The LSE India Society, you have brought your own strengths, and we look forward to convening more roundtables like this under the India Conference banner, and we look forward to the support of speakers like you. Goodbye.